Chapter 11. Godric's Hollow. Lydia loved the Portkey journey. It felt as though she was on a fairground ride. She experienced a huge swooping feeling right in the middle of her, like the feeling of going over the first hill of a roller coaster ride. She shot forwards. Her feet left the ground. She could see the others all around her being jostled as they were swept aloft and along through a howling wind and a swirl of light. Then her feet hit solid ground and the ride was over. They were in a clearing in a stand of trees. "Where are we?" Lydia asked. "About 20 minutes' walk from Godric's Hollow," Harry informed her. He took out his wand. For a few moments, a glowing white haze formed around the tip. Harry swept it through the air, something like a fisherman would when casting a line. The glowing haze disappeared. "I had one of our squad come to Godric's Hollow this morning when we heard about the sinkhole, to keep an eye on it," he explained. "I've just sent him a message to expect us." He led them to a path which took them out of the trees and on to a farm track. They followed this for a couple of 100 metres until it met a country road with wide grass verges but no footpath. They took the road to the right, and it led them across the rolling countryside. As they walked, they talked once more about the Wizarding War. Draco said nothing and looked uncomfortable. Eventually, as they were approaching the first houses and past the road sign proclaiming Godric's Hollow, he said, "Look, I admit I was a complete arse back then. I was born into a privileged family and my father always had clear expectations of me." Harry stopped walking. The rest of the group stopped a pace or two later. "Draco, I know," Harry intoned. "You also saved my life, and so did your mother. I'm sorry that you and your father don't see each other anymore. But you should be proud of the choices you have made since then." Draco hung his head for a moment. Then he lifted it and looked straight at Harry. "You saved my life too," he said. "Thanks. I know you also got me the Hogwarts job. McGonagall left me in no doubt about that." Harry inclined his head. "Ron," Draco continued, "you saved Goyle. Later punched me in the face while you were invisible, quite rightly." "Yeah, good times," Ron reminisced. "Someone's coming this way," Lydia informed them. "Hi, Tem," Harry called. A quite handsome but rather beaten-up-looking man of middle years strode up to the group. "Harry," he nodded. "Good to see you. No activity to report." "Everyone, this is Tempest Savage," Harry introduced him. "I won't use job titles just in case, but Tem's from our office. This is Professor Malfoy from Hogwarts, and these are Ambrose and Lydia, our new friends." "Oh, yes," Theora said. "We still have no idea how you got into the office, or even the ministry." "Well," Ambrose smiled, "I am terribly sorry if we have bamboozled you, but it categorically was not any of our doing." "Hi," said Lydia. Ambrose, Lydia and Draco all shook hands with him. "Could we see the site?" Draco asked Tem. "Of course, Professor, this way." He led them along the main street, past the public house. A painted sign hung by the door proclaiming the name The Duck and Stool, and bearing a picture of a duck sitting on a bar stool by a bar. Ambrose gave the pub a wistful glance and sighed as they passed. They stopped at the churchyard. "Almost right in front of the Lich Gate," Tempest pointed out. "It's nothing remarkable, but I'm told it appeared overnight." In the ground there was a hole, around 1 metre wide. It started at the outside as a shallow cone, but became progressively steeper towards the middle, like the bell of a brass instrument. At its centre it disappeared into blackness. Tempest spoke in a hushed voice. "Some young boys told me they dropped coins and other things down it to see how deep it was. They could hear them rattling down into the depths, but they never heard anything hit the bottom, or so they said." "Could you keep a lookout for me, please?" Draco requested. "There are a few tests I'd like to try." They gathered around him, facing outwards. They glanced round occasionally to see what he was doing. He began to draw various objects from a small leather pouch and wave them over and around the sinkhole in turn. First was a pendulum with a bone or ivory weight. then a small glass and silver instrument, which looked like an orrery or a planetary system. A brass tuning fork was next. From the sounds he was making, the others surmised he was having no success. A pack of cards, a small turnip, a gyroscope and a glove puppet all failed to bring signs of satisfaction from the Hogwarts professor. "Oh, wow!" he exclaimed eventually. "Look at this! Look at this!" The others took it in turns to see what had produced this reaction. Draco was holding what looked to be an antique magnifying glass. It had a wooden handle, a brass surround, and a glass of about 8 or 9 centimetres diameter. Unusually, the glass appeared to be flat, but this glass did not magnify. Looking through the glass at the sinkhole, they could see what appeared to be black tendrils or tentacles reaching out from the hole. They waved about, not as in a breeze, but independently and under their own power. Draco seemed utterly delighted. "I almost didn't bring this," he explained. "We've had this at home, in the family collection, for as long as I can remember. Nobody has ever known what it was for. I'm not even sure now if it's intended for something else more specific, but it looks like this could show us where old magic has been used. Though I suppose it may only show certain types of magic." "Those arms seem to be reaching for you, Ambrose," Ron noted. "Perhaps they're attracted to old things," he quipped, then continued more seriously. "Alternatively, they might try to strangle muggles." He took a few steps back. "They've given up now," Ron reassured him. "Someone's coming," Lydia hissed. "Ah, good afternoon, Reverend," Ambrose greeted the slender, bespectacled man in black. "We were admiring your aperture." The vicar sighed. "That thing," he groaned. "I cannot tell you how many wags have suggested that the ground is opening up to swallow me. I thank goodness it didn't appear in consecrated ground." "Any idea how it got here?" Harry asked lightly. "None, I'm afraid," he sighed again. "The geologist chappie, who lives a few villages over, came to look at it and declared it impossible. Someone suggested it might be a collapsed ant colony, which seems feasible. Then there was that odd young man who was hanging around for the past few days. But I can't see why anyone would visit a village simply to install holes in the floor." The clergyman leaned over the hole and peered into it. From the expression on his face, a casual observer would have been forgiven for assuming the hole opened into a sewer. The vicar shook his head. "I'm sorry, please forgive me. I must be about my duties." "Of course, Reverend," Ambrose replied. "Please don't let us detain you with our idle curiosity. Thank you for your time." "Good afternoon to you all," the vicar smiled. "Gentlemen, young lady." As the clergyman turned to take his leave, Harry nodded to Tempest. The Auror took out his wand and muttered, "Obliviate." The vicar stopped for a few moments. He looked up and down as though he was trying to remember what he was doing next, before continuing on his way without looking round. "I take it you removed his memory of our conversation," Ambrose murmured to Harry. "Exactly," Harry confirmed. "Tem is an expert." Ambrose glanced at Lydia. "I suppose at some point we too will have to be..." Harry nodded and said, "That would be..." "Procedure," Ambrose finished. "I suspected as much from the conversation with Professor Lee, whose meaning suddenly becomes clearer." "Sorry," was all that Harry could say to that. Draco asked them to gather round and keep lookout once again, while he conducted more experiments. They mostly consisted of placing various objects around or in the hole. Finally he stopped, stood up straight, and heaved a great sigh. "Detection seems to work, but I'm not able to remove or affect the magic in any way. Short of throwing a muggle down the hole, of course." He nodded at Ambrose. "That would have to be an exceedingly small and slim muggle, undoubtedly," Ambrose pointed out. "Well," Draco winked at Lydia, "don't worry, I'm sure we could fit a bigger muggle in there somehow." Lydia grinned. "It would serve him right." "Next step, Carrowmore," Harry said briskly, bringing them all back to the point. "Another portkey?" Ambrose asked. Actually, no, Harry responded. The distance is too much, and I'm not sure enough of the details of that area to put us in a safe landing place. Also, travelling over the sea is always a bit tricky for some reason. How do we get there, then? Lydia asked. By the magic of using the Holyhead to Dublin ferry, and then getting a friend to set us up with the portkey from there, Harry smiled. Actually, Harry, Draco interjected, if we are going to Holyhead, there's a small detour I'd like to make. I feel I need to talk to the druids of Anglesey.